Negotiation is where fortunes are made or lost. So how prepared does a buyer need to be before they sit at the table? I'm Tim Graham and the Property Playbook starts now. Today I'm joined by Scott Aggett, one of Australia's most experienced deal makers, with over 4,000 transactions under his belt. Scott is the founder of scottaggett.com and soon to launch Green Shoots Property. He specialises in teaching buyers how to prepare properly and negotiate with confidence. Scott, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Tim. Thanks for having me.
Pleasure. Why don't we start? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, I spent a lot of time as a real estate agent on the dark side, Tim, so I did 23 years on that side of the fence. I founded the first 3 Bell property franchises in Sydney in the eastern suburbs, so a great deal of experience in negotiating with both owner-occupiers and investors as well. Before that, Sydney for 15 years, also in London doing the same thing. So 23 years in that hot seat. And then about 8 years ago, I launched Australia's first negotiation as a service business called Hello House, which recently changed hands. And just actively working behind the scenes before, as you just said, and we launched Green Shoots Property, which I'm excited about.
Yeah, very exciting times.
Yeah.
So tell us, with scottaggett.com, what do you do there?
We work with investors mainly, but we also buy principal place of residence homes for customers that are finding their own properties. So the negotiation as a service model that I created was really arming up people that were already going to find their own properties, but they needed help in strategy to shorten their days on market and to increase their deal flow, and then give them a much clearer path to understand the right price to pay, weed out the problem properties that had issues with due diligence, and then control the negotiation. So it was performance driven in terms of ensuring that they paid the least amount they had to and increase the percentage chance they had of winning the property. So that's about 20% of what I do at scottaggett.com now, and 80% is focused on investors. And what we've been doing this year mostly has been focused on buying in green shoot markets, those markets that are starting to show signs of going from a cool market to now showing some warmth. They're increasing in their growth rates, and they're tomorrow's future hotspots. So we're active in those markets.
So buying in the early in cycle.
Yeah, 100%.
Very good. Now, one of the things you often talk about is having a rock solid buyer brief. What does that actually look like?
Being honest with yourself is the first important thing, Tim, is defining what you're really searching for and you're not willing to trade on. So I have coached buyers over a 30-year period to define that down to 5 ironclad non-negotiable bullet points. And the reason that's important, having sat on the agent side of the fence for me as well, is that as an agent, I would meet on average 200 new buyers per week. So no disrespect for you, Tim, if you were coming along with the family, but you're not special, and neither is anybody else. So unless you're ready to sign an unconditional contract, and what I perceive you to be a red hot buyer, I just don't take you seriously because of the sheer volume that I've got.
You've got to stand out, don't you?
Yeah, got to stand out from the pack. So when you can really clearly understand what you're looking for and you know it exists, that's going to cut through the average buyer and put you ahead of the pack. So we do that. We search for just listed properties, just sold properties to match that up and correlates nicely with your buyer brief. And then we communicate that, this is really importantly, every single week with agents to stay top of mind. And when you do that, you're creating opportunities that others are going to miss. Yeah,
that's a good point. So a lot of that comes down to having the right data as well. So what sort of data, both home buyers and investors, should they have at their fingertips?
Yeah, I think it's as easy as just understanding real estate or domain in terms of the 2 main portals for what's on the market currently in the core market that you're interested in buying in, what's recently sold, so the last 30 or 90 days, what the buyer depth is, what the depth of people competing at auction, what those prices are being spent in real time as well. So I think 4 to 8 weeks is a good time to be able to track that market and be an expert locally, and physically see as many properties as possible. So I would guide my customers to try and see 50 open for inspections before they make a decision and start negotiating.
Wow. Yeah, right. So, I mean, one of the things that I find when you're going in to negotiate as well, the obvious one is you can compete on price. The other one that people often know is you can compete on terms, but the one that people often forget is timing. How important do you think timing of your offer is?
Yeah, I mean, you want to alleviate as much buyer competition as possible. And if you're buying properties that are in a sought after location and it's a quality home, and we've determined that already by understanding the buyer brief and how difficult it is to replicate that asset, so you can price that in. If one of those properties comes up, you know it's going to be hotly contested. So there's no point coming in with a lowball offer, which is going to get rejected, because you want to engage the seller and actually learn something in terms of how close you are to the fire there and getting a deal across the line. So moving with speed is paramount then to your buying success. You want to upset that agent's process. If it's an auction for example, campaign, their vested interest is to march everybody towards that pressure cooker environment on that fourth Saturday or whenever the auction may be. And same for their vendor as well. They need to condition their vendor to sell under auction conditions. So getting in early and making a confident decision in terms of where your offer sits and making a strong offer and alleviating as many of the terms that could be perceived as weak or a problem. So I tend to say with buyers that you need to flatten out those speed humps.
Yeah.
You know, if you want a 6-week settlement but they want a 10-week settlement, you know, can you take the 10-week settlement and just get rid of that speed hump? You know, try to make it as easy as possible for the seller to agree to your terms, and a big part of that is moving fast and putting the right offer on the table in the first place.
I know it's important for as a buyer to be really confident, but it's actually just as or equally as important to give the agent that's actually selling the property confidence in you.
Yes. Yeah, 100%.
What are the sort of types of things we should be looking at to make sure that they're, you know, the agent only wants to sell it once? How do we give them confidence that you're the right person to be buying this property?
I think it starts with building rapport with agents. I think it's overlooked by a lot of buyers that they don't have a great deal of faith in dealing with estate agents. There's not a high level of confidence in terms of what comes out of the agent's mouth. So naturally, buyers are pretty reserved in terms of what they tell agents. So I like to really clearly communicate because that stands out from the pack. I try to build rapport with people as quickly as possible. And really important, I think, is doing what you say you're going to do. So I outline how I'm going to move through the buying process, which shows some confidence that I know what I'm doing. I give them estimates of the time it's going to take me to do so. So, you know, today's Tuesday, for example. By Wednesday, I close the business, I'll have the building and pest organised, the contract reviewed. By Thursday afternoon, when that building and pest is back, I'll be ready in a position to sign an unconditional contract. Does that work for you, Tim? Yeah, and then I do it. And that's really important. So the agents know that they've got a high degree of confidence that if they're putting an offer forward, that I'm going to back it up. Yeah, and a buyer has to have that level of confidence.
And that comes with, you know, being pre-approved to begin with, knowing exactly what your budgets are, knowing that you know where your offer sits is going to be competitive enough, and you can back that up with some stats.
Yep, absolutely. And I think most people in Australia that are buying in auction guided markets are misled by underquoting as well. So there's no point rushing to do all those steps if you're going to come in with an offer that's far below what it's actually worth. So the guide price isn't worth the toilet paper it's written on. If you start with that in mind, then you can focus on working out really what the home is once you do that thorough analysis, and then you can come in with the right offer.
Yeah, good. One of the things I was going to ask you is it's really important, obviously, to have all of those things ticked off. That's all the good side. What about the bad side? What are some of the biggest, most common mistakes that you see?
Yeah, I think it starts with not being honest with yourself about where the value is in the market that's going to work with your budget, and what you're willing to trade on or not trade on. Okay, so those are really key things that I think people struggle with up front. Also, I see a lot, and I've been very fortunate over the last 30 years to have a front row seat into a lot of buyers that are going through this ugly process of navigating the buying process, and it takes them on average 10.1 months, I should say, to buy.
Yeah, wow.
And the number one thing that I see is this lack of strategy at the start, and often it's husband and wife or partners that just aren't on the same page, and that doesn't come to light until 4 months, 6 months in. They've wasted a lot of time. If it's a rising market condition, that's cost you a lot of money.
Oh, the 10 months of price movement in the right market could be, you know, 100 grand.
Yes, and on average you're missing 5 times. So there's, you know, wasted contract reviews, wasted building and pest inspections, and what's your own time worth at the end of the day as well. So there's a cost to doing business. So I think strategy is a really big thing, and then understanding the tools that you need to be able to do due diligence to ensure that you're buying the right quality assets. So being able to check things like flood, fire, any easements or covenants, major power lines, what the traffic flow is like, all those types of things are going to have a fundamental impact on that property's value long term.
The big one, what about, how do I find a bargain? Everybody wants to know, how do I find a bargain? Do they still exist?
Look, the occasional one sneaks through for us, but I think the mentality of sort of going in low and winning these properties at a low price is unreliable at best. The problem is if you go in low and you secure a property, I would argue that you've bought a property that no one else wants.
Yeah,
so why have you been able to sneak that in at such a low price? So realistically, most of our deals are done at very close to, you know, where the big buyer interest is, where market value is, and it's about saving 2, 3, 4% or whatever it might be. Sometimes it's more than that, but it's those smaller amounts that we're sort of focused on, but it's winning the best quality assets in really sought after locations and controlling that so that you can win in buyer competition.
I actually find a lot of the time that the best deals are often done because of the terms as well.
Yeah.
You know, if somebody's a motivated buyer and you can appease what they need, that's where you can often get the cheaper price.
Yep, and it's getting to those properties or those sellers early, right?
Yeah.
So you've got to have that strategy of the defined buyer brief, high-level communication with agents to get those opportunities consistently, and when you do, you strike and you don't let those opportunities go. And I think watching the psychology of buyers when I was an agent myself is that most people would come back once, they'd be dictated to by the agent as to when they could next get in. So they might be another 7 days or 3 days. By that point, there's a whole lot of other emotional interest in the property, and it just builds on that. By the time you're ready to make an offer, so are 4 or 5 other people, and then the agent wants to run a competitive process. So you've got to have that confidence to understand product knowledge and then strike.
Yeah. I think for a lot of consumers, they may not realise, in the last 10 years, our population's grown by 4 million people, and in that time we have less listings for both properties for sale and for rent right now, and that's why there's so much competition Australia-wide in these listings. So trying to find that bargain, you can't control the competition. Our job as buyers agents is to go and find something that is below market value if you can do that, but we ultimately can't control what other people perceive as value as well, and if they're prepared to pay higher, we just have to keep on moving.
Yeah, and you're competing against people that don't understand how to analyse property correctly. They're emotionally invested, and unfortunately in our business, as you know, it's very transactional, so you've got a lot of buyers agents that will just rush to get a deal done at any price rather than actually doing thorough due diligence on what it's worth. So there's, speed is going to be really important in that instance, but so is really having a clear understanding of what a home's worth so that you can walk away, because many of the deals that we talked about in the last few weeks is, often we'll land a deal, often we'll lose, and that's just how the business works, and it's more about
losing
shots
can
on
mean
goal.
winning in this case too.
Yes, correct, and it's more about shots on goal and that confidence of being able to walk away when you know the value isn't there. It's gone beyond that, and there'll be another home, and there's always another home.
There's always another one. That's a good point. So let's move past the transaction. We've got the transaction in place. We've won the deal. How important are things like financial buffers, especially for an investor?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that's overlooked by a lot of people in terms of the confidence that you can sleep at night knowing that if there's something that goes wrong, a water heater blows up or there's issues with a roof leak or whatever, that you've got that capacity to act quickly. You've got to protect that asset long term, and I think a lot of people will rush in to buy these cheaper homes that need a lot of capital expenditure, or there's the risk of that anyway. It needs deep pockets to repair these, and the construction prices have gone through the roof as well. So having that buffer is really important, being able to plan ahead for a rainy day, and that's certainly part of all of our cash flow analysis, is that we put those numbers in to be very conservative to make sure our customers are making the right decisions.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, and finally, if you could give one tip for anybody trying to get into the market before the end of 2025, what is it?
Well, I think at certain price ranges, you're going to have a lot of pressure based on what the government's doing in terms of this 5% deposit scheme. So I think it is moving fast to get yourself into a position where you understand really what your borrowing capacity is and financially the health of your bank balance and what you can afford to spend. And then it's getting very defined with the strategy of what you're buying for. So it's not a scattergun approach. You're not just rushing to buy anything by October 1st or by Christmas, as you said. It's more about being very deliberate in your actions. And when you do that and you define your goals, you can reverse engineer it and make sure you don't make any mistakes.
Terrific tips there, Scott. Thank you very much for joining us today. Well, folks, that's the play for today. This program has been brought to you by hotspotting.com.au. This is Ticker. We'll be right back.